what if, like, all our ideas about intelligence are kind of too limited? You
Hmm.
know, like, what if there are all these other kinds of intelligence out there that we're just, like, totally missing?
Yeah.
Not because we can't build them yet,
Right.
but because we're, like, looking for the wrong things.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's what we're going to deep dive into today, some really wild stuff.
Definitely.
We're going to be diving into the work of this biologist, Dr. Michael Levin.
Okay.
And he's doing this research that's, like, way beyond just normal biology, you know?
Interesting.
He's looking at how cells make decisions.
Wow.
So we try to, like, unpack all these ideas he has about intelligence and agency and how his work makes us think differently about the future.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff, because it's not just theoretical. Dr. Levin is building on like decades of research in biology,
Right.
especially in things like regeneration, developmental biology.
Like how things actually work.
Yeah, exactly.
He starts with this, like, crazy experiment on duck embryos. So picture this, right? You have this tiny little clump of cells.
Okay.
Like, it's just this tiny little disc of, like, 50,000 cells.
Okay.
And it's on its way to becoming a duckling, right?
Right.
So you'd think one embryo, one duck, right?
Seems intuitive, yeah.
But Levin finds that if you, like, carefully separate these cells, like early on, using the superfine needle, you can actually get multiple ducklings
Wow.
from a single embryo.
From one embryo.
Yeah. So it's like there was this hidden potential for, like, multiple ducks just hiding in those cells all along.
It's like, were there always two ducks in there?
Right. How does that even work? So, like, how does he explain that? Was there always two ducks in there?
Well, that's where things get really wild.
Right.
11, he's saying it's not that simple, right? Like, it's not just as easy as saying, oh, there were always two ducks.
Okay.
What's more interesting, more weird, is that the number of individual, like, agents in a system,
Okay.
whether it's a developing embryo or even, like, you think about, like, a society, isn't fixed. It sort of emerges from how all those individual parts are actually interacting.
So it's not about, like, counting up the parts. It's about how they work together, those relationships.
About the relationship between them. Yeah, exactly.
That's, like, really mind-blowing when you think about it.
Totally.
Like, our whole idea of what an individual is, of a self,
Right.
it's way more, like, fluid than we think.
It's more flexible than we think.
Yeah. And so this connects to this idea that Levin calls the intelligence ratchet, right? And this helps explain why some of the most, like, resilient creatures on Earth have really messy DNA.
Okay, that's interesting.
So, for example, we have these planaria.
Okay.
They're these crazy worms that can basically regenerate from, like, almost nothing, like a tiny little fragment.
Really?
Yeah, they reproduce by basically ripping themselves in half.
Wow.
And each half grows into a new worm.
Oh, wow.
They're basically immortal, these things.
That's wild. Okay.
But here's the thing. Their genomes are a mess.
Really?
Like, they're super chaotic.
You'd think, like, for something so good at surviving,
Right.
at regenerating,
Gotta have it all figured out.
they'd have this, like, beautifully elegant genome.
Right. Like the most elegant, efficient genome.
Yeah.
No, it's a mess.
So that's interesting. Yeah. How does that work?
That's the paradox.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where the intelligence ratchet comes in.
Okay.
What Levin's saying is that when the individual parts of a system, like in this case, the cells in the planaria, are already really good at solving problems on their own,
Okay.
there's less pressure to have a, like, perfectly optimized genetic blueprint.
So they don't need, like, this top-down plan.
Like, evolution doesn't have to spend as much time, like, fine-tuning the DNA over generations.
Because they've got it figured out at a different level.
Yeah. Because the cells are already, like, so good at adapting and, like, self-correcting.
Right. Like, they can handle a little messiness.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
And this is where Levin's work gets even cooler, because he connects these simple creatures, like these planaria,
Okay.
to, like, us,
To humans.
to our own bodies.
Wow. Okay.
And he says that our bodies are these incredible, like, multi-scale problem solvers.
Okay.
It's like intelligence is distributed across every level.
Not just, like, in our brain.
Not just in the brain, right?
Yeah.
It's like from how our cells behave, to how our tissues organize, to how all our organs function together.
And that's so different from how we usually design technology. Like,
No.
we tend to build things with this kind of top-down approach.
Right, like everything comes from the top.
All the intelligence is, like, concentrated at the very top.
It's like the difference between, like, a a fancy robot,
Yeah.
that can follow a pre-programmed path.
Yeah.
And a whole colony of ants, right?
Exactly.
Each ant might seem kind of basic on its own.
Right.
But together they can adapt to like all sorts of changes.
Totally. Yeah, they can solve problems that a single ant couldn't even
It's fair.
comprehend.
Exactly. And so Levin's saying maybe intelligence isn't just about like raw processing power
Right.
or having this like perfect set of instructions.
It's not just about the blueprint.
Right. It's more about how well a system, whether it's like an organism or even a society,
Yeah.
can adapt,
Yeah.
solve problems, learn
Yeah.
at every level.
It's like this distributed intelligence. And that leads us to another really interesting aspect of his thinking, which is that
Okay.
he asks us to imagine, what if we could directly perceive our internal states?
What?
Yeah, what if you could perceive your blood sugar levels
Okay.
or the functioning of your organs
Mhm.
just as clearly as you see the world around you?
Whoa, that would be wild to like actually experience the inner workings of your own body.
It's it challenges our assumptions about intelligence, What if we could directly experience the incredible intelligence of our own bodies, the way our organs are constantly working together, keeping everything in balance?
Yeah, we might start to see those organs totally differently,
Totally.
Not just like these passive parts, but like almost like these active agents.
Right, like little intelligences in their own right.
Yeah, like constantly making decisions and solving problems to keep the whole system running.
And that makes you wonder,
What?
other forms of intelligence are we just blind to right now?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because we evolved with our senses, our way of experiencing the world.
Right, right.
But what if there are other ways of being intelligent out there?
What other kinds of brilliance are we missing, right? Okay, get ready. Because this is where Levin's vision of the future gets really, really wild, okay?
Okay.
So forget sleek robots and self-driving cars. Okay, Levin's talking about a future of radical diversity.
Okay.
And we're not just talking about AI here, we're talking about like hybrids, chimeras, humans augmented in like countless ways.
It's like a blending of the biological and the technological.
It's cyborgs, it's modified organisms, it's technology that like blurs the lines between what's alive and what's engineered.
Yeah, it's a wild, fascinating, and honestly kind of challenging vision of the future.
For sure.
Because it brings up some really big questions, right? As we become more and more able to, manipulate biology,
Right.
create these increasingly complex systems,
Yeah.
how do we even begin to decide what is a being that deserves ethical consideration?
Right. Where do we draw the line?
Exactly. Where do we draw the line?
So that's where this idea of the cognitive light cone comes in, right?
Exactly.
It's not about just what something is, but it's
Yeah.
about its capacity for experience, right? Its goals, its ability to like impact the world around it.
Right. It's about how its intelligence manifests in the world.
Yes.
And Levin argues that our ethical frameworks need to evolve alongside these technologies, right? If we create beings, whether they're biological or artificial, that have some level of awareness,
Right.
the ability to, to suffer, to feel,
Yeah.
how do we make sure they're okay? How do we include them in our circle of compassion?
That's a big question.
It's a huge question.
So like as we're stepping into this future
Yeah.
where the lines between human and other are getting really blurry, how do we even start to think about these ethical questions?
Right. And what would a society that embraces this radical inclusivity even look like?
Yeah, what would that actually look like?
Well, Levin actually, he uses this, he points to that cantina scene in Star Wars, you know,
Oh, yeah.
as kind of a visual metaphor
Check that out.
where you have this crazy diversity of beings, different species, robots, cyborgs, all just coexisting, interacting, contributing to this vibrant society.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful image.
It's like this vision of the future where differences are something to be celebrated, not feared.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it's a future that's going to require a lot from us,
For sure.
intellectually, ethically. That's not just about tolerating difference. It's about cultivating this really deep understanding
Yes.
and respect for minds that might work in ways that we can't even comprehend.
Minds that experience the world in ways that we haven't even imagined.
Yeah, it's we need to become anthropologists of intelligence.
I love that. Yeah, anthropologists of intelligence.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
A little while ago, everybody was freaking out about super intelligence, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what if it turns against us, right?
Right, right.
But Levin, he's saying maybe we're worried about the wrong thing.
Interesting.
Like, maybe the biggest problem isn't some evil AI.
Yeah.
It's us and our own, like, limited way of seeing things.
We get stuck in our own heads, right?
Exactly. He says that every intelligence, whether it's, biological or artificial,
Yeah.
it's going to have its own cognitive light cone.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like their own sphere of awareness,
Like their own way of experiencing and understanding the world.
Yes. It's like how a dog sees the world, right?
Right.
Compared to how we see it.
Right. Totally different.
Totally different. But we're both intelligent, right?
Absolutely.
It's just our understanding is shaped by, like, different things, different senses, different evolutionary paths, all that.
And those differences, they can lead to misunderstandings.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Miscommunications, even conflict,
Especially as we encounter intelligences that are, like, radically different from us.
Yeah, with those totally different light cones.
Yeah. It's like we almost need to become, like, anthropologists of intelligence.
I love that. Like, we're studying a whole new culture.
Exactly.
With its own customs and languages and ways of being.
And we have to approach it with that same kind of humility,
Totally, like a sense of wonder.
Yes. Curiosity, a willingness to learn.
Not just impose our own frameworks.
Exactly. Because think about it. The more we can understand these other intelligences,
Yeah.
the richer our own understanding of, like, everything becomes right.
Absolutely. It opens up all these possibilities.
So, like, what can we even do to, prepare for this future where intelligence is everywhere and it's all different?
I think it starts with being open, open to those ideas that seem strange or challenging.
Being willing to, like, question our assumptions.
Yeah, like really listen when something doesn't make sense.
Instead of just being like, nope, that's weird, I'm out.
Exactly. Lean into that discomfort a little bit.
Because the most amazing stuff, it's often in the stuff that, like, makes us uncomfortable at first,
It's in those unexpected encounters, those moments where we realize how much we don't know.
It's like, okay, that's kind of scary, but also really exciting.
Exactly. It's about embracing that sense of wonder and possibility.
I love that. Well, that feels like a good place to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, a lot to think about.
So much to think about. It's like this whole new world is opening up,
It really is.
And it's up to us to, like, step into it with open minds and open hearts.
And remember, intelligence is bigger than we thought.
Way bigger. So, to everyone listening, thanks for coming on this journey with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Keep those questions coming. Keep your minds open, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.